Hi, my name is Jason Bunn-Parsons, and I'm here once again with my mentor, Sue Golubock, to do the second part of Core Concepts for Understanding Autism. We're doing the second and third points. And so, it's so basically, well, we gave our credentials, as far as, how we're qualified to even speak on this subject, and so I do want to make it, clear, especially from this point on, that what I'm proposing are suggestions. Okay, that this is a starting point. I'm not, proposing that I am giving the definitive list that should absolutely, because there are things that I did not include that I know that Sue would definitely include. But as far as these are concepts, once I was taught them, revolutionized my life. That is why these specific points are going to be brought up. But as far as Sue, if you want to go ahead and give your thoughts on what we're going to be discussing before we start.
Sure. Right now, as Jason pointed out, I have also discovered the more I know about myself, the more I understand myself, the more I have learned about being autistic. And I look at what others have decided autism is all about. And I think there's a lot of misunderstandings, miscommunication that needs to be resolved. And I think this is where Jason is going with this.
Right.
And saying that who knows better, and we need to have some input.
Right.
Jason.
And so, okay, so let's go ahead and get, here we go. Okay, so this here is, the core concepts for understanding autism and how to improve the quality of life of all autistic aspies. Okay, and so we did point one on the first video when we also introduced ourselves. And so now we're going on to point two. Society's understanding of autism needs to be grounded in the experiences of autistic aspies, as well as the assessments of their loved ones and those who work professionally with them to overcome specific problems unique to them. It should not be based on the DSM, which is written by psychiatrists who lack this personal and professional experience with such individuals. And one of the things that Sue and I discussed, but before, just a second here. Okay. Yeah. One of the things that Sue and I discussed before we went online is that I don't want to get too much into talking about what's wrong, with the DSM, but we do, because I want to focus on, so what it shouldn't be, what it should be. But nevertheless, we do need to explain, what the problems, with the DSM are. Is, yes, that these, it's produced by the American Psychiatric Association, and it may be overly simplified to state that psychiatrists are the ones who are qualified to prescribe medications for those who need them for psychiatric issues, whereas psychologists are the ones that actually talk with us and help formulate life strategies. Again, that may be overly simplified, but the point is, okay, I've been working almost 2 years now at Emerson Elementary, and we have a number of therapists. We have speech therapists, we have occupational therapists. We do not have psychiatrists. They do not work one-on-one with our children. So yes, they can produce, that they can, take a look at 1,000 human beings and notes that, that X percentage of these human beings behave within a certain range of ways, but then there's these other human beings, and it's like, well, okay, yeah, so you can observe that there's something different about us, but is different bad? That's going to be the whole question. And I know that this is something that Sue, talks on a lot, is whether or not being different is necessarily bad. So I'm going to let Sue tag in here, because I know that she, has some opinions on this.
And I agree. We are human beings. We are very individual.
Hmm.
And yes, we do have things in common that maybe other people do not have in common, which causes us to be considered autistic. But are those differences pathological? Are they ones that need to be medicated, eradicated, etc.? The problem is that the DSM treats or diagnoses behavioral disorders, mental health disorders. And because the primary symptoms, because people did not understand what was going on inside the autistic brain, they simply judge it by behaviors. So if you demonstrate these behaviors, then you can be diagnosed as autistic. I really think, as Jason pointed out, we need to better understand really the underlying issues of what it means to be autistic. And from my research and interest in the autistic brain, I know that there are underlying neurological issues that research is calling autism a bioneurological difference as opposed to behavioral. They are recognizing that the behaviors emanate from the way the brain processes information. This is another area that needs to be rethought of in terms of, does autism belong in the DSM, or should it be in looked at as a bioneurological issue?
In which case it would only appear in the ICD International Classification of Diseases, which addresses all healthcare issues, both medical and mental health. Okay, but but it should be viewed as medical, not mental, and therefore it should not be in the DSM. Okay, and Sue and I were also discussing, well, who should officially, come up with the criteria, and it is my opinion that that there should be two sets of people. One are well, all six of them are going to be professionals who work with autistics as special ed teachers, occupational therapists, speech therapists, whatever, so on and so forth. However, that then you break up into three two groups of three, as far as those who are also autistic, like Sue, as well as three that are also loved ones of autistic. So they understand, everybody understands autism from both a personal and professional point of view. And so ideally, what I would like to see is for the ICD to basically appoint, this 6-person panel, to draft, that this criteria, okay, that it is used as a foundation for understanding autism, okay, and just simply accept what it is, is and just go from there. And so anyway, so as far as, there are 6 fundamental truths about autism that helps us better understand their complexity, okay. And so um, last spring, for Autism Awareness Month, my principal, Mr. Lodato, said he wanted to interview me for, for the daily announcements, and so he told me that I should, think of, 2 or 3 questions that he can ask me, and I told him, you just need to ask me one question, okay. If I was to sum up my life experiences in one single word, what would that one single word be? And so once the interview started, I said the word paradox, okay, because the paradoxes of autism can result in autistics being extremely gifted in some areas and extremely inept in others. The struggles they deal with are often aggravated by people who do not accept that autism is a paradox, instead focusing solely on one aspect of autism while refusing to acknowledge the paradox, acknowledging the legitimacy of the paradoxical opposite. And so I have actually told people that I have had my own genius used against me when they see how brilliant I am to solve this problem, but then I fall flat on my face trying to do the simplest things. So I score 140 on my IQ test in third grade. I graduate from high school with a 1.9 GPA, which means I got C's and D's when my IQ test says I should have gotten straight A's, maybe a rare B at worst. Okay. And I could go on for 15 minutes rattling off examples of, of, of these paradoxes in which people are like, no, you're not trying, you're lazy, you're unmotivated. You cannot possibly be struggling with something so simple when we just saw you achieve something far more difficult. And so I know Sue has her own way of explaining this using her own terminology, so I'm going to tag into her and let her explain using her terminology.
Well, I have to admit, I never came up with the word paradox, but I have often said autistics do things to the extreme, extremely well, or they struggle extremely. We do the extremes. And it's really, really hard for us to find and stay in that middle ground. So we struggle a lot. And whereas the typical brain does things so easily and automatically, typical people never even think about. It's so easy for them. How could things be hard for us? And yet we compensate by using the intelligence part of our brain to do what the easy automatic part of the brain should be doing. So we end up struggling with things that would be easy for everyone else, and yet we struggle with it.
Mm-hmm. So, and so then the next term is non-typical. Let me scroll this up. Okay. Okay, here we go. So most individuals have a similar range of development as well as means of completing certain routine tasks, problem solving, socializing, etc. Individuals that are outside this outside that range are non-typical. This results in these differences can be positive, negative, or neutral depending upon the situations that they find themselves in. Okay, and so again, like I was mentioning before, when the psychologists, psychiatrists, that they make note of 1,000 people, yes, I guarantee you they can find these similarities. I have a chart that talks about the typical development of children in speech, socialization, so on and so forth. Okay, and so what is typical can be officially charted, and so if you're not in that range, okay, it's time to ask questions. It's not time to make judgments. It's time to ask questions about, okay, yeah, I'll let Sue elaborate on that a little bit more. But as far as finishing off my thought is that that I don't believe that autism should be defined as symptoms, but as having attributes. Okay, because these attributes, as we mentioned already earlier, can be positive or negative depending upon the situation that they find themselves in. Okay, and so I do oppose the concept of the term paradox, autism being a paradox, because the fact that it involves us comparing ourselves to our fellow autistics instead of just focusing on, okay, what are my needs? What are my gifts and what are my needs? I'm not going to compare myself to Sue. I'm not going to compare myself to my two roommates, both of whom are also autistic. Okay. Years ago, I was helping a elderly neighbor lady putting together, a cabinet, and so I invited a friend of mine who was also autistic, and so we got everything put together, and we're putting on the backboard, and so he took one row of screws, I took the other row. By the time I finished putting in my first screw, he was starting his third. That was a side-by-side comparison of just how completely inept my motor skills are. However, the ADHD aspect of his autism is so out of control that people swear he's on drugs, even though he doesn't use drugs. Okay, which one of us is higher functioning? Okay, it just doesn't add up. Okay, and so yeah, this stuff actually pertains to the previous point, but as far as yeah, but as far as us, being not non-typical and being outside this range, yeah, I really do believe that, that they're referring to, what we have as attributes rather than as symptoms, okay, is going to be a much more accurate understanding. So, Sue, go ahead and tag in there.
Okay. Jason and I only disagree on the words sometimes we use, but we're describing the same thing. Um, I would say there's no question we are different. We perceive things differently, so we respond differently. Most people are going to be startled by a loud, sudden noise.
Mm-hmm.
I am too, except I tend to way overreact. I go beyond startled. I scream because I'm trying to protect my nervous system from
Yeah.
that feeling shattered, totally destroyed.
Yeah.
Things, simple sounds like my dog licking himself. That particular pitch really upsets my nervous system. Um, so yes, we perceive things differently, so we're going to respond differently to it.
And so yeah, and just to elaborate on your auditory sensitivity, I remember one time during our meeting, somebody scooted their chair back and it did a loud squeak. And from my perspective, it's you had a panic attack. Well, maybe panic attack isn't accurate, but you definitely panicked.
I overreacted,
Yeah,
no question.
it was literally, and that's how, so anyways, it's so then neural connectivity, the root of autism is that the brain's neural connectivity development is not typical, is not in a, okay, let's try this again. The root of autism is that their brain's neural connectivity develop in a non-typical manner that is far too complex to explain and to document. And actually, right now, I just demonstrated one of my paradoxes that for as intelligent as I sound, because I've researched this, I have reading deficits. Okay, I only read at a 6th grade level. Okay, and even though I wrote this, okay,
Mhm.
uh, correspondence is very cumbersome for me. But you know what? It is what it is. My life doesn't evolve around my ability to engage in correspondence. It involves me engaging in verbal dialogue, and so and so that's how I roll. But every once in a while, yes, I have to deal with the fact that yes, I do need to read things, and I just simply accept the fact that yes, I'm going to struggle. Just take a deep breath, restart, and finish the reading. Okay, I'm not going to beat myself up over it, because I struggle in this area. I'm going to just acknowledge that, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to stammer, but yeah, but once I start elaborating on stuff, that's when I'm going to really shine. But anyways, but as far as this subject, neural connectivity, it is so complex that there is absolutely no way we could even scratch the surface in a video in which basically we would have to explain in less than 5 minutes. It can't be done. But Sue, go ahead and just comment on that. So
And actually, my differences are very different than Jason's in
mm-hmm.
that I am very verbally articulate. I can read very well, but I don't understand what I read. I have to go back over and over and read because my understanding. So we are a spectrum. There's no question. We are different in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we need to understand it is a spectrum. You can't group us all together. But as far as explaining the underlying neurological issues, that has been my passion. And autistics, when we get passionate about something,
Mm-hmm.
we delve into it down to the last detail. And I have been struggling over the last, 10 years on trying to be able to explain in an hour what the underlying
Yeah.
neurological issues are that
Yeah.
autistic individuals deal with. And I have honed down to what I think is an hour. And under making sense of autism, my coworker, speech pathologist that I work with, and I are developing videos, and to be able to hopefully help other people understand what they consider that little black box that they don't understand and therefore
Mhm.
ignore.
Right.
But I think it's vitally important, and I'm glad that Jason has included it in one of the core issues.
All right. Thank you. And so then, brain plasticity. Okay, the brain of every life form on Earth is constantly changing, enabling it to adapt in both positive and negative ways. This provides everyone with a scientific basis to believe that some areas that we struggle with may self-correct and or be modifiable. I'm not saying that we will outgrow any of our developmental disabilities or that various therapies and other treatments are not needed. I'm just saying that no one should ever hoist the white flag of surrender in theirs or anyone else's personal lives, and that this is something that while back I was at one of the meetings, and I was bringing this up, and I explained to to the people, like, just because you couldn't succeed when you're 8 because you didn't have the neural connectivity at 8, that doesn't mean you're not going to have it at 28. Okay. And so what you need to do is you need to give yourself the benefit of the doubt that maybe this time it could be different. And the audience was shocked that I would even suggest it, because it's like, that this is a concept. This is possibly the most important concept that is utterly neglected in understanding autism, and a lot of parents actually object to autistics like Sue and I speaking on behalf of the community because, oh, you don't know what it's like for my child, who has these struggles you can't possibly deal with, and oh, by the way, we work professionally with these very same children, so no, we are not ignorant. But here's the thing. The classroom that I'm assigned to, right now, okay, if they would have understood autism back, in the 70s, like they did today, this is the classroom I would have been assigned to. Because back, okay, first of all, I did not say my first word till I was 23 months old. I was not talking full sentences till I was 6 years old. So what happened was my parents were encouraged to withdraw me from kindergarten and just put me in a regular daycare center in order to give me that extra year in order to develop my language and social skills. And in my case, it worked. Okay, by my 6th birthday, I was talking full sentences, and it's not because this daycare was any kind of a specialized daycare. It was just your regular daycare that any parent might drop their kids off to. It was all about brain plasticity. My brain was just given that little extra time, and then I was re-enrolled into to kindergarten, and I resumed on from there. And so this is so important to understand, that when you look at who Sue and I are today, that you don't know who we were as children. Okay, you're assuming that I've always had this level of verbal communication. I have not. Okay, again, I did not say my first word until I was 23 months old. I was not talking full sentences until I was 6. Okay, so yes, this is so important. Before you start saying, oh, my child is this lost cause, they're never going to get married, they're never going to be able to do this, you're never going to. Your child isn't even 8 years old yet. How can you be making these judgments about your children? Because nobody is explaining to them that the brain is in a constant state of development, and that what your child is today at 8 is not who they're going to be at 28. So, Sue, you want to tag in?
I totally agree on this issue. That unfortunately, because we struggle in some of the earlier years, and parents project that we're going to continue to struggle at that level,
Mm-hmm.
they become overly protective,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't challenge us to our they don't assume competency. They assume
Mm-hmm.
that we're not competent, and they are not challenging our brains to expand, to grow,
Mhm.
to make new connections. And unfortunately, a lot of times, even with the educational system the way it is, they teach us to be dependent. Um, do it this way, now you do that. And they teach us to become very dependent instead of helping us to learn the skills we need to become independent, because they look at it as we're going to be stuck where we are.
Mhm.
And the latest statistics that I have read, there are close to 80% of autistic adults who are still living with their parent. And
Mhm.
there's something very wrong about that.
Yeah. And so, and we definitely want to make it clear. We realize the parents are well-meaning. They're doing what they believe is best for their children, but they are human beings. Human beings make mistakes, and so we're not demonizing them. We're just hoping that they will open up their minds, to this possibility, and also encourage these autism experts to start talking about brain plasticity, so these parents
Mhm.
have a basis to believe. That's the reason why these parents don't believe, is because nobody is giving them a basis to believe. And that and that falls on the experts. That falls on the people who are teaching the teachers and who are teaching the parents. Okay, they need to be taught to give everybody the benefit of the doubt that maybe things can be different in the future. So and then point E, microanalyzation. When problem solving, autistic aspies examine every aspect of a subject in such detail that it can be an obsession if not properly developed, but it can also enable them to come up with intricate and creative solutions that no one else would ever think of, if it's properly honed. And that this entire presentation is a fine example of this. Okay, because Sue, read my rough draft, and 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 I understand myself well enough to realize when I am losing control of my microanalyzation. And so I immediately sent Sue an email. It's like, okay, I need you to help rein me in. Okay, because I literally came up with material for 5 separate presentations. Okay, and so yeah, that and that's what happens. And so at least I'm trained. I understand myself well enough to realize I've fallen in this trap, and I know that Sue is one of several people that would have no problem helping me get myself focused. So that way, okay, let's finish this subject. And as far as the other topic matters, well, one of them is going to be part 4 of this series. The other 3, it still needs to be completed. Okay, and so but anyways, so yeah, just it's so yes, people get annoyed when we go into way too much detail and they try to get us to stop. Okay, it isn't about getting us to stop, it's about getting us to realize that, okay, certain things need to be set aside for a time when you can focus on that. And right now you need to spend this time focusing on whatever your stated main objective is. So Sue, you want to chime in on that?
And this is a perfect example of what I had learned from research about the way what they have found, the way the autistic brain works. We take in way too much information.
Mm-hmm.
We have difficulty filtering out what's unimportant from what is important to focus on. So we've got all of these details to try to put together like a 1,000-piece puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
where it should only be maybe a 100-piece puzzle,
Yeah.
if we would filter out the things that aren't important. I always got in trouble as a student, as a therapist, with my teacher, supervisor, because I would go into such detail in my reports, making everything fit,
Mm-hmm.
that then they would complain that was bad because I was making the other students and therapists look bad because they didn't go into such detail and make all the pieces fit so uniquely as I did. Um, but that's just the way our brains work. We take in, we make way too many connections. And so, yes, like Jason said, sometimes we need to be
Mm-hmm.
helped to hone down in terms of filter out what is important,
Yeah.
what's not important, and come up with a little more
Yeah.
cohesive piece.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my roommates, I've gone with him to, places like Social Security and stuff like that. And so, the representative, needs, the information as far as, okay, well, why are you here? And he proceeds to tell his entire life story. It's like, okay, he doesn't need your entire life story. He needs the specific information about why you're seeking these benefits. You don't need to tell your entire life story. But anyways, so, and then lastly, we're finishing up with natural countermeasures. Okay, and so okay, it is a well-known fact that someone who loses their sight will develop an increased sense of hearing. This concept is not just limited to the blind, but is also a well-known factor in so many other physical disabilities that the healthy parts of a body will compensate for the unhealthy parts or injured parts. This gives us a basis to consider the possibility that these same principles may okay that this same principle may typo here be at play yeah for those with this developmental disabilities. It can also provide specific examples. I could provide specific examples, this being a factor in the day-to-day lives of autistics. And so for me, I already stated that, okay, I only have a sixth grade reading level. That was the result of me going to vocational rehabilitation and getting the full assessment done. Okay, not only did they include that, but they also include the fact that I scored at the 93 percentile rate in terms of auditory memory. Okay, and so I'm going to struggle with, if you give me a big thick manual to read, I'm going to struggle. You give me, somebody who's going to talk to me, I'm going to absorb just about everything that they say like a sponge. Okay, so when it comes to my reasonable accommodations, I'm allowed that. That's literally the only accommodation I've ever asked from any employer, is that I have things explained to me verbally. Don't give me a big thick manual, because I am never getting through it. Just sit down with me, talk to me. I'm willing to come and talk on my own time, off the clock, to learn and understand. And the places that are most able to accommodate me, like United Cerebral Palsy and my current employer, are also the two places where I had the most vocational success at. Because my superiors absolutely had no problem taking me aside and letting me talk about what's going on, and how better to solve the problem. And so so that so yeah you know that that that's how I roll. So, Sue.
And I'm, again, just the opposite of Jason. What I hear, I get maybe 50%. I scan people's speech for maybe keywords, and then I miss words like not, which changes the whole context because I've missed it. So auditory processing for me is the worst. I need the visual of written words.
Mm-hmm.
And so my accommodation would be, don't call me on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Please put it in an email so
Yep.
that I can read it. I can comprehend better what I read than what I hear. So, yes, every individual, if you're struggling with something, are going to come up with a way to cope with or compensate for it. Stimming is considered a way of compensating for stress.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us self regulate. And yet, a lot of our coping strategies that we have, people either assume this is what we need without asking us, or they deny us and say, no, that's not appropriate, or that's
Yeah.
not the way we do it. So they try to redirect us to deal with situations in the way they would or typical people would. And therefore, they're actually making us struggle more.
Right. And and so it's interesting, that the accommodations that Sue and I give each other, so that way we can collaborate on this, is yes, I send her the email, but I also send her a text message saying that I just sent her an email. Okay. And if we have to, to elaborate on it, we do it over Zoom. So that way, she can read my lips, read my facial expressions, because like she said, it helps her. And so this is how, Sue and I have found our own little system to accommodate each other. So that way her and I can collaborate to our fullest in projects like this. So Sue, you want to make any last comments on the subject matter that we've discussed today?
My only last comment is that we are understandable, but you need to be able to listen to what we have to say, what we know and have learned about ourselves. And yes, for me, it's taken 77 years to get to this point where I really, truly understand how my brain works and what I need. Jason's coming right up on it in terms of better understanding himself.
Right.
So you really do, we need people to listen to what we have to share because we are understandable.
So, okay. And so thank you. And so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We're a few minutes over the 30-minute goal, but that's okay. It was all good stuff. But anyway, so next week we'll finish off this particular outline. Okay, doing the last 6 points, and so then we'll start on the next one. And so Ed, so until then, I bid you all farewell.